Welcome back to another episode of Weekday Saints podcast. We're so glad you're joining with us as we explore stories around our city of people doing faithful work in all kinds of industries in our town. And today we're really excited to talk with a really important industry in our town, those that are educating our kids. We're excited to have Cindy Kean join with us. She's a teacher here in Hamilton County, has been doing that for almost 20 years, and she shares just what it means for her to impact the lives of children and why she goes about doing that and how her faith informs what it looks like to see these kids grow up and mature, not only with their brain, but with their hearts. And so hope you'll enjoy this episode and tune in. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Weekday Saints. My name is Jonathan Ingram. I'm joined by my co-host, LaQuisha Ewing, and we're so happy to have Cindy Kean with us today. Thanks for making time to be with us.
Yeah,
we're excited to chat and tell a little bit of your story. Well, can you first just start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Are you from Chattanooga? Have a family? Tell us about who Cindy Kean is.
Yeah, I am from Lookout Mountain, Georgia. So I grew up here and went away to college and then moved back in 2007. So I've lived here since then, and I live here with my husband, Andrew, and then I've got three boys, a high schooler, a middle schooler, and a soon-to-be done with elementary school kid.
So you're not busy at all.
No, nothing to do but write lesson plans.
So you're writing lesson plans. So tell us about what you do for work.
So I am a fifth grade teacher at Battle Academy. So I teach 4 cohorts of about 20 kids. So around 75 to 80 kids this school year that I teach math to.
The best subject in the world.
Right?
Math, right?
I'm glad somebody likes it.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just, sometimes, you got to make yourself, encourage yourself.
That's right.
You have to pretend. It's funny. Most adults are not willing to say like that they hate reading or that they can't read. That's like nobody wants to be illiterate. Yeah. But so many adults are like, I hate math, or I hated math, or I'm not good at math. It's a whole phobia we got going.
I don't know that I hate it, but it definitely wasn't a favorite. But you seemed like you could have taught me some math. I might have liked it. You seem like the cool math teacher.
Did you always want to go into education?
Not particularly. When I went to college, I kind of thought I wanted to study business. And then I actually started working with some middle schoolers in a neighborhood kind of behind the university that was connected to the church I was going to, had a ministry there. And so I started hanging out with middle school girls and doing Bible study with them. And then I kind of decided, like, okay, this is the neighborhood I want to live in. These are the kids I want to work with. But I think I want to get to them before they get to middle school. So I'd had some things in high school. I'd played sports. I thought I maybe wanted to coach. So that was like familiar. So I liked the idea of teaching. But then I looked into elementary education and kind of pivoted my second year of school and decided to do that.
So having worked with children myself, there tends to be a story or maybe a face of a kid that is like a linchpin for your decision to kind of anchor down and work with children. So you said you were teaching Bible study to a group of kids. Can you talk to us like maybe about the moment or somewhere close to the moment where it was an aha for you?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I would say the girls who I was spending all my time with are LaQuina and Terencia and Joni. And so it's kind of funny. They were all in middle school, and I was in college thinking I'm grown, right? I'm 18, and they're 13. So now we've got a 5-year gap. Right. And these are all women now with children who I keep up with, especially thanks to Instagram. But I do think it was those girls just like having the privilege of spending time with someone else's kids and getting to know them is something that I, through that time after school and after school programming, and then at night over meals in Charlottesville, that was the moment that I'm like, I can't believe somebody's parents are letting these kids spend time with teachers. And we were teaching the Bible then, but I think just that opportunity to think like, oh man, I can actually do this with kids in a school setting all day long and teach them something that's gonna get them ready for the world in a practical way in the public schools. That just was like a huge deal to me. I can't think of like this moment with them, but those girls are, they are like the people that made me want to spend time with children, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you think about, like, how long have you been a teacher now? And what roles have you played in?
I think this is year 18 for me, 18 or 19. Wow. So I've taught 5th grade and 3rd grade, primarily social studies, reading, science, and math. And after a few years of teaching, I actually went into coaching and was coaching teachers on math. It was kind of one of those situations where many adults are not elementary school teachers because they love math. They hated math, and maybe that's why they're actually teaching. They wanted to like redeem that terrible experience they had. Or they like love books, right? Like that's why a lot of people are teaching in elementary school. So I was kind of the one person I felt like at my school that somebody thought like, oh, she seems to like math. So I kind of got dubbed like the math person. Yeah. So I did that for 8 years. And after 8 years of coaching, I had a really tough year. And that year I actually heard Senator Corker speak, and he had just finished a second term and talked about term limits. And I was like, my term limit is up. It's 8 years. Like teachers need leaders need term limits. Yeah. And so as a coach, I was like,
that's a quotable.
I like that.
Leaders need term limits in every vocation.
Every single field, right?
Yes.
And so I was like, this is my 8th year. It was January of my 8th year of coaching. And I was like, I need to go back to the classroom to know what I'm telling people to do, to be connected. I was missing student connection. And so that year I decided in January to go back to the classroom. There happened to be an opening that year that we were having a really difficult time filling as well in 5th grade. 5th grade is really hard to staff in an elementary school. And so it was like my dream job was also open after I'd done my dream job for 8 years. Yeah. And so I went back to the classroom, and that was 5 years ago. So I've been teaching 5th grade for 5 years. I told myself, I just want to go do something for 5 more years. Like, I want to do the same thing for 5 years in a row. And then that was the COVID year. Yeah. So that year was like gone. And then the next year we were hybrid. So I've said that I've not done the same thing. Teaching is always that way, but these past 5 years, I've certainly not repeated a single like lesson plan or anything, just because so much of our world is like pivoted. And
so what do you like? You've had multiple roles, but all in kind of the understanding that it's a school context, right? Singular building. Thinking about the work you do, like, what do you love though about what you do? Like, what makes you keep coming back in some other, even though you're taking different roles, you're sticking with it. You're not like becoming like a shoe cobbler or something.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the thing I love especially about being a classroom teacher is just the time spent with children and learning what makes them laugh and making them laugh and making school a place that kids want to be. Like that is like a bad day for me is when the kid doesn't want to be in my class. Yeah. Like that's the bad. I mean, of course, it's when learning isn't happening, but that's generally because they don't want to be in my class because, I made them mad or I embarrassed them or, they couldn't do something and just couldn't bounce back. Or so for me, I think that is like making kids love school is the thing that I love the most. I also have been all my teaching in Chattanooga has been on, the south side of town. So that part of our city is really important to me. I live in St. Elmo as well, so we say, Calvin Donaldson, where I've taught, and St. Elmo, we're the real South Side, even though everybody thinks this is the South Side. But those communities are really connected, and it's so fun to have worked. I've worked in 2 schools, and kids, are transient. And so kids would pop up at one school and be like, oh, shoot, Miss Kean's here too. Because I would flip. There was a time I flipped between 2 schools. But just this section of town is really important to me, and the families that we serve. I would say that's like what makes me come back. I do love math. I was not I'm not in high school. I was not I loved learning. I've always loved learning. And just finding the connections between what I'm teaching and what everybody else is teaching is the most fun part of my job.
I've known you a long time, and there's been multiple times where our families are hanging out and we'll see a student that you've taught, and they could be in high school now or that, and the way you light up and the way they light up, you can tell like that was something that was a special moment when they were in the class with you.
Yeah. I just had today at school, the secretary sent me a picture of a previous student who brings her child to do some speech services before school, like he's not school age yet. And she sent a picture and was like, do you know this girl? And I'm like, I see her once a month. She's at school a lot, but the secretary didn't know. And it is a student she's 24 now. But when I had my first baby, I would come up to school and do garden club in the summer. So I stupidly sent home my phone number on this flyer for garden club. I'm just contact me if your child wants to come. This girl and her friend would call my home phone line. It's a home phone. And so today I was like, y'all don't even know. Jasmine's been calling my house since she was in 3rd grade. So it is really fun to still have, students who are now adults coming back to school. Yeah. And I'm still like, how am I old enough that I taught somebody who's 24? That's scary.
I ran into a young lady who was in the 3rd grade when I started working for Hamilton County Schools.
Yes.
And she now is a mover and shaker in the city of Chattanooga. And I'm like, how? You were in 3rd grade. You're not old enough to do that
It's
yet.
pretty awesome.
But I think God kind of weaves our stories together that way. Sometimes people start as little people entering into your life, but then they stay throughout the duration.
Yeah.
I think that's a part of God's love and genius.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of hitting at how you bring a lot of joy to the classroom, and I firsthand have seen you do that. My kids go to battle. They haven't been in your class, but they hope to be in your class one day. But
I teach everybody math.
You teach everybody math. That's right. But your faith is really important to you. And when you think about what the posture that you bring into the workplace, how does your faith, how does that speak into what you want to see happen in the classroom? How is that molded by what you believe about God?
That's a big question. I think as I've thought about this, I think one of the biggest things for me is that a school is a community, and I think that it functions, it can function in really healthy ways. And I think that what is so cool about the work of schools is that we do wrap around families, and it is interesting. There are so many believers in schools, and I did not know that before I came. I did not experience that before. But there are so many believers in schools, and it should be an encouragement to all. It is an encouragement to me as a believer that there are so many Christians that are teaching and who also are walking faithfully to just show God's loving kindness in a classroom. And I think that has been something that I have seen just in the little micro community I might build with the 3 other people that I work with. And then, a full staff of 60 people who are caring and taking, just taking notes on all these kids and what they need. Mm-hmm. It can feel really overwhelming as well. It's difficult enough just to co-parent with my spouse. And then it's we are co-laboring and parenting all these kids, and just the ability to bring bring faith to work has been a huge part of my teaching. And I think just knowing that even like you spoke earlier about just like the way that God is working, like his faithfulness, staying in one community for this long, it's like, whoa, 18 years at one school, just to be able to kind of, every day it's like, what is happening? But to look back and to see God's faithfulness over the long haul, over a school year, that has been really important.
That's really cool. Talk about, you kind of hit at it, but part of teaching is a student doesn't come in just as a brain. They're coming in as this whole-bodied person with stories and backgrounds and things that happened that morning or over the summer. And as you look at the students, how do you see them, one, as a mind to be molded, like they need to know math, like that's a very important thing, but all these other things that are coming in. And as you begin to know those stories, how the way you view them, how does that shape how you teach them and then think about the students that walk in your door?
Yeah, I think that one way that my faith impacts that a ton is just like knowing that kids are image bearers of God is huge. And I think it has, even though I have been a Christian since I've been teaching, but I've seen that evolve in just the way that I interact with kids. Like sometimes you have to remind yourself of that, that like this kid is in God's image, and that is the biggest part that brings value to the classroom. Like that's why the classroom is important, not because of the work we're doing. It's because of the people that are in there. Mm-hmm. I think too, the idea of like creativity in a classroom, just seeing, and a lot of people are talking about this like on the academic side, like in that kids have creativity and they have ideas to bring. We need to like mine, kids' brains for what they have. Seeing it's like asset based, seeing students that way, but that's like Christian, right? Yeah. Like to view kids as not being something that needs to be filled with the knowledge that I'm going to impart as this teacher who has experience, but that they actually have ideas to bring. That is a deeply Christian idea. Mm-hmm. And people are talking about that all over the field of education who are not believers. Like, I think that that's this awesome connection that we can make. Like, we should be the people who are believing that the most. But it's often in like my parenting or in my teaching, Christians kind of have a rap for being the more traditional. Like, I say, you obey. I'm going to tell you what to think, and you're going to, practice that. Like, a lot of our schools are super traditional. Mm-hmm. And so just seeing that kids bring a lot of just their whole selves to the classroom, but they also bring a lot of these academic ideas.
That's good.
So
I love the fact that you entered asset-based and paralleled it with Christianity. Mm-hmm. I literally this morning was in Nashville. I was talking to a group of people about asset-based language. And what are you saying? So for you to look at a child and realize that I have just as much to learn from this child as I have to offer to this child, is seeing that there's value in that little face, in that brain that's embodied in this other very small human. I call kids small, tiny humans. Yeah. Like, because sometimes we think that they're another species when we call them kids. No, they're just tiny.
They're full.
They're just tiny humans.
Yeah.
But that to me is so inspiring, that you can see the work that's being done through their life as part of God's agenda. So what is it? What about your work? Do you think people like? We don't get to hear teachers talk about kids like that. Like, I'm inspired. Yeah. Like, I really am. Like, no gas. Like, I'm inspired. Like, what do you wish people knew about the work that you do?
I do think a lot of people know it's challenging, and I think people, even when my husband and I first got married, he was like, "What are you doing after like 3 o'clock?" Like, there is so much work involved to prepare for it. There's preparation, there's planning. I think those are some big things that people just don't understand, or like the rehearsing. Like teaching is acting, so half the time you have to act excited or act mad or disappointed when you actually don't care. Like, it's okay. But so there's a lot of rehearsal. I do think one of the most challenging parts is just being on the same page with a bunch of different people that are, like I mentioned, parenting, like just being on the same page in a family unit is difficult. So then to be on the same page with how you're interacting with students when you have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different adults, I think that is really difficult. And you have a parent who like is the actual parent, right, of a child who you're honoring. I just think that makes teaching really challenging. And I think we have a lot of strong leaders in schools, and I think we need like some really great followers in schools. I think a lot of times teachers are kind of stuck like figuring out how to like follow, but maybe that's more out of compliance. And like, what does it look like to follow in a really meaningful way? Like, you don't have to be in charge. I've learned that lesson. Mm-hmm. Like, you can be being a really good leader is that you are a really good follower.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the Bible, right? Like, make disciples, go make people better learners.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Jesus told us to do. But it feels like sometimes from the outside, it's like, well, what we need to do is make more leaders. We need to make people stronger. We need to develop. We do need to do all that, but we need to make disciples. We need to make more learners. We need to make more followers. I think that's really tricky in a school.
It's like helping people bring out what it means to be human in all capacities. And one is, sometimes you are called to influence and leading, but oftentimes in our life we're called to serving and submitting to what's going on and being a part of something. I love Dorothy Day talks about we serve people, but we also serve the work. So some of the things we're called to serve is the actual work and doing that well and doing it with excellence with those that we get to serve with.
Yeah.
A lot of people listening to this drive by the intersection of Main and Market on a regular basis, right by Battle Academy, this big building that's there. And if they don't have kids that go there, they don't know what's going on those walls. They know at the school. Is there a story in the past month or so of just a way you saw God show up and interaction with a student and something you've been able to be a part of that would be fun for someone to hear?
Oh man, it's funny. Like the stories that I repeat that happen at school are often like, it might not be God showing up. It might be more of like the funny stuff that happens.
That sounds like a holy moment to me.
Yeah. I do. One thing that has happened in the past, I have fifth graders right now, right? We are 2 weeks from them finishing school, and we've got kids who at any transition, right? All of us as human, we either like lean into that and kind of begin to like mourn losses and cling to things and are sweet, and others of us just push and we are, fighting it. And we've got those two things happening right now at Battle Academy. But I do have one student who has not always loved coming to my class, and there's two students, but one in the past 2 weeks, it's like she's kind of decided, like, I'm gonna lean in and I'm gonna decide to love this. And so every day she greets me at the door and says, hey best friend. And she hugs me. I mean, she could have rolled her eyes 2 weeks ago, but she has decided I'm her best friend. And she is awesome. She is fully engaged in class. It has been such a funny transition because you can see she's like grasping on to, she knows everything's about to change.
Yeah.
And so the other day she actually said, hey, best friend, in the morning, by the time she came to class, she's like, you look so pretty today. She would have never said this before. But one of her friends who's in the opposite side right now of this loss and mourning, she heard her say that, and you could tell she was just like, I don't know why we're sucking up to Miss Kean.
Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with her?
And she says to me, why do you look like you just rolled out of bed? And I'm like,
Don't get
why
too puffed
did you
up.
say that? Yeah, like right after. But they're all kind of finding their way. So and I think like it's those moments that, again, you're reminded, like, man, these are the big things that are going on for them. And I've got stuff that I'm bringing to work every day. I've got my own big stuff I've got going on in my life. But like, this is their big thing.
Yeah.
And I'm there for it.
Yeah.
And like, I can't believe that God lets me be, I mean, like it is a total, sorry.
No,
it's a total gift that like, you know, I'm there for this big moment.
Yeah.
And
front row seat.
I can't believe it. Yeah.
It's such a privilege.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we always catch those, right?
No.
That God allows us sometimes to be an extra in somebody else's story. Like, these are the moments they're going to remember, good or bad. You're in that memory for them. Right?
And I'm not this girl's best friend. No. She won't look back and be like, my best friend, Miss Kean.
You're her best friend today.
But I'm her best friend today. And like, it's great. And it's going to make the end of the year so special for both of us, you know? Yes.
And both of those girls' reaction, the cool thing is you're showing up for both of them in the way that they're dealing with that.
Yeah.
One of the questions we love to ask, and you kind of hinted at some of this, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but is there a Bible verse, is there a biblical principle that's kind of your why, that drives you the days that are hard, on the days where you don't laugh a lot, where you feel like God, something about who God is and what He's been teaching us that drives you to keep going?
Yeah, I think so. Our family verse is Micah 6:8, and so act justly, love mercy, walk humbly is kind of what we say every day as we leave the house. And that is something that I'm trying to live by. And has really, I think, forever, that's kind of been, since I've been teaching, that is kind of the thing that I want to guide how my family's spending time, how I'm going into work. You know, what we're spending money on, who we're spending time with, just all of that. So Micah 6:8 is like what we're trying to teach our kids, what we're living by. And then another really special verse for me is, I don't know the reference, but I read it. But He turned my mourning into dancing. I mostly know it because of the song that we sing at church. I don't know where I wrote it down, but it's Psalm 30:11. You turn my mourning into dancing. You loosen my sackcloth and clothe me with gladness. So during when I did transition back to the classroom, you know, sometimes your work can be mourning and it can be just drudgery. And I was at a point then when work was really hard, unpredictable, didn't feel like I was following anybody. And I kind of had this switch where teaching all of a sudden, truly God turned my mourning into dancing. And so that is one of my I listen to that going to work often and just kind of remember God's faithfulness to me, that He did that then, and He truly did. And that right now I'm not mourning right now. Every day you might have a rough day and need to be reminded. But I think that verse for me has been one that I go back to again and again, particularly after, just a really dry spot 5 years ago in my teaching when I needed to make a change.
One thing I feel really strongly about is teaching and education isn't just about information coming in, but about formation. And the verses you just described are about how we're being formed into people that care about those things. And I do think you probably do a lot of dancing as a fifth grade teacher, I would assume.
Well, actually, right now we're working with the pop-up project in my classroom.
They're doing a lot of dancing.
They're doing a lot of dancing.
We are full on. This is pretty funny.
Flash mob.
Oh, my classroom is a dance studio currently. And so I'm not joking for the next
That's
2
a very
weeks.
literal verse for you.
So we have a class playlist in my class always. So kids, that's like my beginning of the year activity is we build a playlist together. What songs do you want to hear? And so I always have a playlist for every year. So I have it saved in my Apple Music. And it's fun, even my own children will get in the car and they'll be like, oh, the 2019 class. Let's see what's on there.
That's awesome.
But we're working with Pop-Up Project and we're doing dance class because math is, shape, movement. So we're applying all of that right now I have a teaching artist to no algorithms right now in the classroom. We are dancing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's why I was not dressed properly for this. I was trying to act like I'm a dance instructor.
Well, thank you very much for letting us talk with you. Thanks for sharing from your heart. Thanks for what you do.
Yeah.
And for what you've done so faithfully for so long. And it's just an awesome way to see how what you're doing now, the fruit of that, and you're starting to see that, and that's really cool. So thanks for all that
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel that everything that you shared, I want to be like, see you later, best friend. Right?
That's right.
Because the warmth and the authenticity wasn't missed on me. It wasn't lost on me. You could feel the love you have for the kids. So yeah.
Thanks. We should hang out.
For sure.
Well, thanks for joining in on this episode of Weekday Saints. Excited to have you back for another episode.